The luxury resort threw out the old Cowboy. Then the owner found his name on the original deed. The laughter started before the old Cowboy even reached the front desk. Guests gathered beneath crystal chandeliers inside the most expensive resort in Texas, sipping champagne and taking photos beside imported marble fountains. The atmosphere was polished, elegant, and exclusive. Then the automatic doors opened. An old man stepped inside. His boots were dusty. His jeans were faded. His weathered cowboy hat looked older than some of the employees working there. Conversation slowed. Eyes turned. And within seconds, judgment filled the room. The old cowboy walked calmly toward the reception desk, carrying a worn leather folder under his arm. He wasn't looking for attention. He wasn't looking for trouble. But trouble found him anyway. The young receptionist glanced at his clothes and forced a polite smile. "Sir, can I help you?" The old man nodded. "I'd like to speak with the owner." The receptionist blinked. "The owner?" "That's right." A few nearby guests chuckled. The receptionist tried to remain professional. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then I'm afraid that's not possible." The cowboy simply nodded. "I'll wait." But before he could sit down, another voice interrupted. A loud voice. A confident voice. A voice that enjoyed humiliating people. The resort's general manager had arrived. Dylan Mercer, 42 years old. Tailored suit. Luxury watch. Perfect smile. And an ego that filled every room he entered. He glanced at the cowboy and immediately frowned. "What's going on here?" The receptionist explained. Dylan laughed. Actually laughed. Right in front of everyone. "You came to see the owner?" The cowboy nodded. Dylan looked around at the crowd. "That's adorable." The guests laughed with him. The cowboy remained silent. "What exactly do you want?" "I need 5 minutes." Dylan crossed his arms. The owner manages a billion-dollar hospitality company. He doesn't have 5 minutes for random strangers. The cowboy calmly placed his leather folder on the counter. "It's important." Dylan never even looked at it. Instead, he signaled security. And that was the moment everything changed. 2 guards approached. Guests pulled out phones. Some were already recording. The humiliation was becoming entertainment. The cowboy looked around the lobby. Everything had changed. Where horses once grazed. Where cattle once wandered. Where his father had worked. There were now luxury suites worth thousands of dollars per night. But nobody knew that. Nobody cared. The guard stopped beside him. "Sir, we'll have to ask you to leave." The old cowboy slowly picked up his folder. "No anger. No argument. No threats. Just disappointment." As he turned toward the door, Dylan couldn't resist one final insult. "Maybe try the public campground down the road." The crowd laughed again. The cowboy paused. For the first time, he looked directly at Dylan. His eyes were calm, almost sad. Then he spoke. "My grandfather warned them this would happen." The room grew quiet. Dylan smirked. What would happen? The cowboy adjusted his hat. That someday somebody would forget who this land belonged to. Then he walked out. The doors closed behind him, and nobody thought about him again. At least not yet. 3 days later, the owner arrived. Victor Hale rarely visited the resort. He owned dozens of luxury properties across the country. Most of the time, he operated from private offices hundreds of miles away. But this visit was different. A major expansion project was about to begin. The company planned to build luxury villas across another 200 acres. Millions of dollars were already invested. Construction permits were approved. Investors were excited. Everything looked perfect until Victor entered his office. A leather folder sat on his desk. The receptionist had finally delivered it. Attached was a note, left by the old cowboy. Victor almost ignored it. Then he noticed a name. His expression changed instantly. The folder slipped from his hand. He opened it again. Carefully. Slowly. His face lost all color. The room suddenly felt colder. Inside was a copy of the original property deed, dated 81 years earlier. And one name appeared repeatedly throughout the document. Samuel Cross. Victor knew that name. Every attorney in the company knew that name, because Samuel Cross had sold the surface land. But according to the original agreement, his family never sold the mineral rights beneath it. Victor read the document twice. Then, 3 times. His hands started shaking, because beneath the luxury resort sat something worth far more than the resort itself. Natural gas reserves. Millions, possibly billions. And legally, the rights belonged to the Cross family, the old Cowboy's family. Victor immediately called corporate attorneys. An emergency meeting was scheduled within hours. The lawyers reviewed every document, every transfer, every amendment, every historical record. And with each passing hour, the situation became worse. Far worse. The resort did not own the underground rights. Neither did the company. Neither did the investors. The Cross family did. The same family everyone had laughed at. The same family security had escorted out. The same family Dylan Mercer had publicly humiliated. Victor sat silently at the head of the conference table. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Everyone understood the problem. If the Cross family challenged future development plans, the expansion project could collapse. Investors could sue. Construction could stop. Stock values could plunge. The entire resort suddenly rested on the cooperation of one old cowboy. Victor's voice finally broke the silence. Find him. 3 days later they found him. Not in a mansion. Not in a corporate office. Not surrounded by lawyers. They found him repairing a fence on a small ranch 30 miles away, just as he'd been doing for most of his life. Victor arrived personally, along with attorneys, executives, surveyors, and a convoy of black SUVs. The old cowboy never seemed surprised. He simply continued repairing the fence. Victor approached. "Mr. Cross?" The cowboy nodded. Victor removed his sunglasses, something Dylan Mercer had never done. He showed respect. "We need to talk." The cowboy drove another nail into the fence. "I figured you would." Victor explained everything. The ownership records, the legal review, the expansion plans, the investors, the potential disaster. Then he made an offer, a very large offer. The cowboy listened quietly. When Victor finished, silence filled the ranch. Then the old cowboy smiled. For the first time, "You know what my grandfather used to say?" Victor waited. He said, "Land remembers." Neither attorney understood, but Victor did. The old cowboy wasn't talking about money. He was talking about respect, and that was something money couldn't buy. Victor nodded. "What do you want?" The answer shocked everyone. The cowboy didn't ask for billions. He didn't ask for luxury homes. He didn't ask for corporate power. Instead, he unfolded an old photograph, a black and white image. His family, standing on the land decades earlier, before the resort, before the developers, before the money. "My family's cemetery is buried behind your west ridge." The room fell silent. Victor looked confused. The cowboy continued. "Construction crews paved over the access road years ago. Nobody had known. Nobody had checked. Nobody had cared." The old cowboy looked directly at Victor. "They erased my family's history." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Victor asked quietly, "What would make it right?" The cowboy answered immediately, "Restore it." Weeks later, the story exploded across the country. News helicopters arrived. Reporters filled the town. Social media spread the footage everywhere, especially one video, the security footage from the lobby. The footage showing Dylan Mercer laughing. The footage showing guests mocking the old cowboy. The footage showing security escorting him out. Millions watched. Millions became angry. Millions demanded accountability. The company's board responded quickly. Dylan Mercer was terminated. Publicly. The same way he had humiliated others. Investors demanded changes. Executives apologized. But the biggest moment came during the official ceremony. Hundreds gathered near the restored family cemetery. The old access road had been rebuilt. Historical markers installed. Land protected permanently. The entire town attended. So did the media. Victor stood at a podium. Then he did something nobody expected. He handed the microphone to the old cowboy. The crowd became silent. The cowboy looked around. At the land. At the hills. At the restored graves. At the people who finally understood. Then he spoke. "My grandfather used to say people think they own the land." He paused. The wind moved through the grass. "But the truth is, Everyone listened. The land owns the story. The crowd erupted into applause. Even Victor, even the executives. And for the first time in decades, the Cross family name stood exactly where it belonged. Not hidden, not forgotten, not erased. Remembered, respected, and honored. The luxury resort remained open. The company survived. The investors recovered. But every guest who arrived at the property would now pass a bronze monument near the entrance. A monument telling the true history of the land. The history nobody wanted to remember, until one old cowboy forced them to. Years later, visitors still stopped to read it. And every time they did, they saw the same name engraved at the top. Samuel Cross, the man who never forgot, and the family that finally got their respect back. Because in the end, the most valuable thing beneath that resort wasn't natural gas. It was the truth.